Hi, everyone. This is Kathy, VP of Operations at Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated. I am so fortunate today to be here with our Director of Publishing, Christopher Paul Carey, and our very special guest, author of one of our upcoming books, Tarzan Battle of Pellucidar, Win Scott Eckert. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great.
Great, great. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we've got some exciting news today to share with you all. We're going to start off with Christopher, who's going to give us an overall status report of what's happening.
Okay. Just to give a little introduction here, we at Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated have our own publishing program, which was actually started by Edgar Rice Burroughs himself back in the 1930s. It went dormant after the late 1960s for several decades. And Jim Sullis, our president, a few years back, resurrected our publishing operation. And now we have 3 different series we publish. The Edgar Rice Burroughs Authorized Library, which is publishing Edgar Rice Burroughs' original novels, all 80+ original novels in these handsome editions with Joe Jusko covers and frontispieces. So these are fantastic new deluxe hardcover editions. And then we have the Edgar Rice Burroughs Universe series, and that's what we're here to talk about today, because that's Wynn's book is in the Edgar Rice Burroughs Universe series, and this is considered canonical, so they're considered on par and in the existing continuity with Edgar Rice Burroughs' original works. So that's very, very exciting. We're taking a lot of care to make sure they're faithful to Edgar Rice Burroughs, and of course we're getting these stories from other worlds, so they are just naturally consistent because it's the real world. And then we have the Wild Adventures of Edgar Rice Burroughs series, which allows authors to have a little bit more freedom in terms of the canon and stuff like that. The big announcement today is that we have Win Scott Eckert's book, Tarzan Battle for Pellucidar, up for pre-order on our website at edgarriceburroughs.com or erburroughs.com. So go there and place your order. We have a special trading card offer with it. So you can get a special Jane trading card with the paperback edition. And then we have a collector's hardcover edition. Oh, that comes with the paperback and the regular hardcover edition. And then we have a collector's hardcover edition, which comes with a signed bookplate, signed by Win Scott Eckert and Mike Wolfer, who wrote the bonus story, Victory, Harp, and Clash on Caspak at the end of the book. So if you get the hardcover or the paperback, you get the Jane Porter card. And it's a new Edgar Rice Burroughs Universe trading card, so that'll be number 3 in the series if you bought the collector's, or if you bought the original Edge of All Worlds Carson of Venus book. And with the collector's edition of Tarzan Battle for Pellucidar, you get the Tarzan card. So the special Tarzan Edgar Rice Burroughs Universe trading card. So that's the only way to get that. They will never be offered anywhere else. They're exclusives with the pre-order and purchase of Tarzan Battle for Pellucidar. So that's
Only
available
on our
at,
website, right?
what's that?
Only on our website.
Only on our website. It's the only place you can get it. So erburroughs.com. So go there after you're done watching our video here. So so that's that there. Did you want to introduce Win?
Yeah. So glad that you are able to join us today, Win. Thank you for taking some time out with us. So tell us, what does it mean to have this book actually in print and now available?
Oh man, I'm over the moon. I mean, this project has been in flight for a couple years now, in a couple of different iterations. But I finally received the true story, and so I was able to kind of refine down, to the actual story that needed to be told and shared with all of the Burroughs fans. And, I mean, I never could have in a million years, and I've written other tie-in properties, but in a million years, I never could have dreamed that I would be writing an authorized canonical Tarzan novel, and frankly, Pellucidar novel too, because Pellucidar is honestly, you know, right up there with Tarzan, my most favorite Burroughs series. That, in fact, the very first Burroughs book that I ever read when I was a kid was At the Earth's Core. So Pellucidar was my introduction to Burroughs, even before Tarzan. And I actually had and I think Chris and I share this in common. I had my first edition of At the Earth's Core was the movie tie-in edition. So I had the movie poster art on the cover of that book. I just love those Pellucidar books. I've read the series 5 times in my lifetime, and of course I've read some of the Tarzan books several times. I can't claim that I've read the whole Tarzan series 5 times, but the Pellucidar series I always go back to. So I'm just thrilled.
So as a writer, and now seeing this book in print and available, what was your approach to the material?
You know, my approach was, this book and Tarzan and Pellucidar needs to be accessible for modern readers, and that's kind of the whole point of the new ERBU that you and Christopher are working on, and that everyone at ERB Inc. is working on, is to make these books accessible and available and interesting to new readers. And so that was one of my primary goals, is how do we tell a story that's new and fresh and exciting, and is going to get newer, modern, younger readers excited about Tarzan, and also tell a story that is 100% in line with all of the events that Burroughs already said happened. In other words, canonical, right? Completely lining up with all of the continuity and all of the prior stories.
So
Go ahead.
You had to do a ton of homework and research and whatnot to be able to stay true to the canon. And what was that like for you?
That's probably where I geek out a lot, and I have a lot of fun with that. I don't know, Chris, if it's all right to say this, but I guess you can edit it out. As part of Team ERBU, with Chris and some of the other writers and creators, one of my big roles was to create a very comprehensive chronology and timeline, not just of Tarzan and not just of Pellucidar, which again were very important from a storytelling perspective, but of everything. Where do the Carson books fit in? Where and how do the Moon books fit in? And certainly we had lots of really interesting conversations with Chris and the other creators about, you know, the possibility that maybe there are multiple universes going on, and how do you make a timeline of that? And so I wanted to be very sure that, you know, when people are reading some of the things in my book, and then they're kind of tying that into, well, when does this book take place? Oh, it takes place here. And that makes complete sense, because it takes place after this happened with Tarzan, and after that happened inside Pellucidar. So my role, I think, was to make sure that everything was sort of lined up and provide a bit of a resource to those other writers. And I love it. I love doing stuff like that.
Well, it's particularly fantastic because so many of the people out there, and especially with new audiences, they don't understand that ERB was one of the very first writers to establish a universe approach, and they don't understand that he wrote so many different genres, and he was so successful with a lot of his world building and development. So it's really great that you all have embraced it, and that we're moving it forward for the modern audience. We're making it accessible. So congratulations on the book. So tell us about your previous projects and the other things that you've done in your past as a writer.
Yeah, sure. Probably my biggest claim to fame is that I'm the legacy collaboration writer with science fiction writer Philip Jose Farmer of one of his series, Patricia Wildman, who's sort of an adventurous pulp hero that Philip Jose Farmer originally created. Found the manuscript and worked with him to finish that manuscript based on his outline and under his guidance. And I've continued those stories. people may know me from what Farmer called his Wold Newton universe or family, which is a bunch of interconnected, very similar to this Burroughs universe where everything works together and everything is interconnected. So I played a lot in that universe. Some of my other tie-in credits, I co-edited 3 anthologies of Green Hornet stories based on the 1960s television series Green Hornet with Van Williams and Bruce Lee. That was a lot of fun. And I think my most recent release is a book about the pulp hero, the Avenger, who was sort of the third Street and Smith pulp hero behind Doc Savage in The Shadow. Now, certainly nowhere near as popular as Doc Savage or The Shadow. He was kind of like the third runner-up, but I got to write a book about him.
Well, that's awesome. Congratulations. Sounds like you've been a busy man.
Very busy.
That's great. So as this book now is available for pre-order, what other materials would you suggest that the ERB fan dig into in order to prepare themselves for the fantastic adventure that is the Tarzan Battle for Pellucidar? What would you recommend?
I would think about, rereading a couple of key Tarzan novels that my book has callbacks to. Tarzan at the Earth's Core probably is sort of that, yeah, you definitely want to read that one. Not because this is a direct sequel in any way, but nonetheless, it is a sequel. It's Tarzan returning to Pellucidar and having that big major crossover between 2 of Burroughs's primary series. I would recommend Tarzan the Magnificent, believe it or not, which is actually, I think, maybe one of his lesser known Tarzan books, and probably, in my view, underrated. It doesn't get a lot of mentions, but I thought it was a great book, and I would highly recommend that. At least familiarity with the various Opar novels. You certainly don't have to. By the way, no one has to read any of these Tarzan books or prior books. Exactly. There you go, Chris. It's not required, right? My story is self-contained, and there's enough information in there for the reader to understand what's going on if you haven't read the prior books. So the point is, you can get a little bit more enjoyment about maybe picking up on some tidbits if you've read some of the prior books.
It's like the little Easter egg that you might find in like a Marvel, like tell us about that.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Speaking
Tarzan and the Tarzan twins, believe it or not. There's callbacks to that, callbacks to Tarzan's quest. All of these are some of my favorites novels, and I dropped in some hints here and there, just establishing that this really does take place in the whole continuity.
While we bring up the subject of Easter eggs, I just want to kind of reveal a little secret here that I think a lot of people may have missed when they were reading Carson and Venus, The Edge of All Worlds. But all of these books, these 4 books in what we're calling the Swords of Eternity super arc, of which one is Tarzan Battle for Pellucidar, they all have a little secret in them. And I'm going to, because we haven't heard many people talking about this, I'm going to point it out so people can actually look for these. But so when you get to the back of the book, you've got this little teaser. I try not to show the last page and spoil Matt's book, but little teaser for Tarzan Battle for Pellucidar coming. And then you turn the page, and then got the author credits in the back here. Then you get Edgar Rice Burroughs' bio. Then you get the corporate bio, Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated, and then way in the back here, hidden sandwiched between those pages and the ads at the back of the book, you find this little secret scene called the Quantum Interlude. So this one is in the Edge of Carson and Venus, The Edge of All Worlds, and it's called One Small Leap for Victory. And people who've read the super arc know who Victory is, so they know what that's about. And this is advancing the super arc, these little tidbit scenes, very much like the Marvel Easter eggs in the trailers at the end, where people wait in the theater just to see those scenes, those extra scenes, and those are important scenes that really advance things. Similarly, in our books, we have these little secret scenes in the back. If you take the time and diligence to look through the back matter in the book. It's really exciting stuff. And Win has a great one in his. This was actually Win's idea to do. But we're all really excited about it.
There were so many parallels between what we're doing in a literary way with these books and what we've seen done cinematically. And it just kind of popped into my head one night, like, well, when I'm sitting in the theater after one of those great Marvel movies and I'm seeing all these people walk out and we're going, no, don't leave, there's more, right? And then there's more, and it's key. And then it's picked up again in the next movie a year later, right? And it's part of the story. It's a little nugget that's part of the story. And that's what these quantum interludes are. So you don't even have to wait 10 minutes sitting through rolling credits. You can just flip to the back, right? And it's right there.
We're really trying to be fun with these books and make these entertaining. There's so much in the world that everyone's dealing with right now, and we just want to have fun with these fun adventures. And Win has done a superb job with his book. I can't tell you how much I love this book. It is filled with those Edgar Rice Burroughs universe references. And I hope you could, talk a little bit maybe about some of those, like that opening scene, one of the opening chapters in the book where we get to visit a certain nation. I think that's really, it hits all the right spots for an Edgar Rice Burroughs fan. A really satisfying feeling reading these. And Edgar Rice Burroughs himself did this. He interconnected his stories and stuff like that. So it just feels like Edgar Rice Burroughs.
That's awesome to hear. I'm glad that it resonated with you, Chris. There's an opening scene, because Tarzan doesn't necessarily go to Pellucidar right away. And this is a wartime novel. It's World War II. And I thought it would be interesting as a prelude to kind of kick Tarzan off on this story. This is a thing that helps kick off all of the rest of the chain of events. Well, so the last time we saw that little tiny nation of Lutha was back during the time of the Great War. And even a little bit beforehand and in the leading up to the Great War. And so we kind of know how that ended with Barney Custer becoming the rightful king of Lutha, and that was way back in the 19 teens. What's happening now during World War II? What happened there?
And that's from, I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but that's from The Mad King, the novel The Mad King by Edgar Burroughs. So. Right.
Yep, The Mad King. And by the way, there was already a Custer-Tarzan connection because Barney Custer's sister was the heroine of The Eternal Lover, where there's a section, or I think a chapter at the very beginning, where they're at Tarzan's Greystoke plantation in Africa. So again, Burroughs was doing this back then, and we're just continuing in that tradition. So in this scene, Tarzan is in wartime Lutha and needs to escape and is on a mission. And I really don't want to spoil it more than that, but the point is that we're explaining now what happened to Lutha and how it makes sense in Tarzan's world, bringing it forward from the late 19 teens, at least into the mid 1940s. We know what was happening because again, this is the real world, and we want to help explain how everything is interconnected and it works together. So that's just one of the Burroughs references that I managed to work in. It was a big one, but there are others too.
Are there any specific characters that you wanted to talk about or give us a glimpse about in the book? I know in Carson we've got Victory Harbin, and are there any special little tidbits that you want to share with us about the characters?
Sure. So in terms of the characters, and again, this is a little reference, and I won't mention anything else about the characters except go out and read Burroughs's The Man-Eater. And fans who are really deep in the fandom probably know what I'm talking about. If you're not really deep in it, go find a copy of The Man-Eater. and read that, because that is integrated into my book. Being a little bit more explicit in terms of the characters, I was really, really thrilled to get to write and introduce a new character to the Burroughs world. And again, this is the same thing that Burroughs did, following in his own traditions, following his traditions. And a lot of writers, maybe not a lot, I've heard some writers say, boy, it sure is hard to write these legacy characters. They're weighed down with all this continuity, and then Burroughs gave them family members and gave them a wife, and then he gave him a kid, and that just really inhibits the storytelling. And I don't know how to tell a story with all, and how to put Tarzan in peril, and I'm just saying to myself going, these are not challenges. These are awesome things in the toolkit, right? To use to, I think I'll use that, and I think I'll take a little bit of this, and I'll mix that together. So instead of viewing it as, oh my God, I just want to tell a story about Tarzan and forget all of that. No, let's talk about all of Tarzan's family. Let's talk about Jane. Let's talk about Korak. Let's talk about Tarzan's granddaughter,
What?
Clayton. Suzanne.
That's so cool.
Daughter of Korak and Miriam. And so Suzanne is well, I'll leave it to Chris to whether she's a great character or not. I had a lot of fun with her. She has her own adventure in Pellucidar in the novel. And I think that falls right in with the traditions of what Burroughs did in terms of giving his characters kids and grandkids, particularly with the Barsoom series, that he did that. But of course, he gave Tarzan a son, Korak, and he even mentioned Tarzan's grandson, Jackie. Never appeared, but mentioned in Tarzan and the Ant-Men. So it's all part of the tradition. And the other part of the tradition that I hope I honored and sort of tried to emulate was the intertwining and sort of dueling or alternating storylines, right? That you see a lot of in the Tarzan books. You get a Tarzan chapter, then you'll get a chapter of what's going on with these other characters. And then there may even be a third storyline. Mm-hmm. Well, there's a third storyline, right? And then you'll get, get the third storyline, and then you go back to Tarzan. Well, what's happening there? And then it all comes together.
I love it. Sounds like a great recipe for a successful book. So glad that, are you guys frozen?
No, I'm good. I can hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear us?
Yep, I can hear.
Anyway, so Christopher, I guess we should close it up now, and
I did want to talk about just one thing that I think is really important. Is that you mentioned Victory Harbin, who appears. She's the new character in the Edgar Rice Burroughs universe. And one thing is, in the super arc, we begin with Carson of Venus, The Edge of All Worlds, which is set in 1950. Now, Wynn's book is set in 1943, correct? And yes. So we get to see, the reason we're telling them out of chronological order is because it works better for story order, the unfolding of the story of the super arc, because we're sort of doing a slow burn approach with the super arc. So you get little hints of people what's going on? There's something strange going on. We've got Jason Gridley and Victory Harbin kind of bouncing around the Edgar Rice Burroughs universe, kind of quantum leaping almost through to these different worlds. And they don't know what's going on. And that's introduced in the bonus story in the back of The Edge of All Worlds that I wrote, called Pellucidar Dark as the Sun, which is being serialized in the Eye of Amtor comics in a comic adaptation. But so when you get to Wynn's book, what's great, and he handled it so expertly, is you get to see an 11-year-old Victory Harbin in Pellucidar. She was born in Pellucidar, so this is her native world. And so we get to see her there, and we find out some more. The unfold. She happens to know more than she's been letting on, basically. When she's with Jason Gridley in 1950. And so we get to see that story, and it's a very intriguing thing. I don't know if you want to talk about how that worked at all, Win, but I found that to be one of the most fascinating things, and like just how you deftly handled that character and worked her right into the canon, and told her more of her origin story. You know.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a huge collaborative effort, and I can't even begin to describe the amount of back and forth messages that you and I have had and that the team has had, and so when you start to narrow down to any particular element, it might even be a sort of a question of, well, that was Chris's idea, or this was what, it's hard to say. But at the end of the day, I thought it was a lot of fun to go back and be able to sort of quote unquote introduce Victory, this great new character. And I know it wasn't her introduction to all of the audience, but it's sort of her chronological introduction,
Yeah.
in terms of the overall series, and the interactions. You gave me a great template, Chris, for what her character would be like and how
Yeah.
she would behave, right?
Yeah.
And I just sort of extrapolated backwards 7 years, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, so if she's 18 in the scene that we're looking at there, I was writing about her as an 11-year-old, probably not quite as confident, but still a little brash. And, I think that you gave me enough guidance that I was able to, mostly hit the mark. So honestly, it's your character description and your description of her psychology and what drove her that gave me the tools I needed to write this.
Yeah, we actually have a brief flashback to your novel in the new Eye of Amtor, Carson of Venus, Eye of Amtor #2, which is out on the stands today. You can see there's a reference there. See the novel Tarzan Battle for Pellucidar, and we get to see that young Victory Harbin. And you can see here in this intriguing scene. It's a little bit of a spoiler, but she's met. It's mentioned in my story in Carson, the Edge of All Worlds, but she met this Mahar before, and so she knows something more than she's been letting on, and than the other adults even in your novel know.
Right.
Because she kind of goes off. Gotta get this right here. She kind of goes off on, how do I restore this? Okay, there we go. She goes off on her own adventure, and that was just, and there's another character with her, or another young character, another character named Jansen in one of the families. I won't spoil who that is, but
extending the families, just like Burroughs did. Can I just say, Chris? I mean, when you put up that panel, and it's a panel of Victory from my novel, and it's got a footnote referencing my novel, the sheer amount of planning that has been going on to tell this comprehensive story, individual stories in novels, which are pretty standalone, plus the vignettes, plus the comics, and it's all tying together. This is a massive undertaking that you have done, right? And that you have coordinated and planned. And I don't know, I'm not expressing myself very well, but I have a lot of admiration for your approach and what you've been doing, and I'm thrilled to be a part of it. And what I want the fans to understand is that, seeing a lot of comments through the years, before I was even involved in this project, in Burroughs fandom, and some of the material that was coming out, and it's like, well, they put out this book, but then the next book put it out and that contradicted this, and why didn't they fix that? And now we know that those were the wild adventures, which don't need to be consistent with each other, right? And so that makes a lot of sense. But I want the fans to understand that now those questions that they were asking then are being addressed. Why didn't they make this work with that? And how come they didn't coordinate? Can they get these authors talking so that they're on the same page about this continuity? That's all happening now. And I think that's really important for the fans to know and to understand. That's a lot of work, but I think that it's worth mentioning.
It is a lot of work. sorry, getting distortion on my end here, but it is a lot of work. And I can't thank you enough for your contributions to it, both in terms of the chronology and working out a lot of the canon and making sure everything is working properly. And in terms of your contribution of the novel, which is just an amazing story. That's an amazing installment in the canon. And I know fans are really going to love it. It feels like Burroughs, and it moves it forward, which was always part of the idea of this. Because let's face it, when Edgar Rice Burroughs was writing his novels, he was moving it forward. There were things that were changing, you know, as things went forward, and he introduced it, you know, many new concepts and characters as it goes on, and as the history unfolds of all these different worlds: Barsoom, Pellucidar, Tarzan, and you know, and so we're just carrying it on. You know, if ERB had that immortality elixir that Tarzan had, you know, he would still be writing these books, and he would be advancing them as the times advance, you know. And so now we're up to the 1950s, 1940s, 50s with this new series, and we'll see where it takes us, but it's going to go forward. But thank you so much for your contributions.
Thank you for letting me be a part of it. It's been quite a ride, and I'm thrilled.
So you've heard it now from the experts here, and I'm super proud of our program and for Christopher's efforts and Wynn, his contribution. You've got to go online and get your books now. We're going to go ahead and shut it down. Stay tuned. We've got a lot of great things happening with the publishing as well as other projects. So stay tuned.